everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you to Terra Nova Nordic Spa for having us this evening. And thank you, Wendy. We really appreciate the invite. It's such a pleasure to be here. So this evening we're going to talk a little bit about consciousness. And we'll talk about the importance of it, what it is, why we need it, and how to get more of it into our lives. So I'll start out with, what is consciousness? When we think about consciousness, often we think consciousness is my mind. I'm aware. I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm aware of my body, my emotions. But when I talk about consciousness, I'm referring to it on a little bit of a deeper level. When I think about consciousness, I think about it as the awareness of the divine that lives within inside of me. I think about consciousness as the essence or the energy behind what makes all of this move, what makes me move, what animates me, what makes the trees grow. That's the consciousness that I'm speaking about. So, Beth, I'll hand it over to you. What do you think?
Well, first I want to say hi to everyone and thank you for having us. So I guess when someone asks me to define consciousness, it's interesting because you can take it from so many different perspectives. And as I think about how it relates to us in terms of our reality, I think about words like connection and harmony, balance, acceptance, peace, things like that. But also I think about it in terms of duality. And because consciousness includes everything, it includes all that is, you can't separate it necessarily from anything. So when we're looking at things like love, or even resistance and movement, stillness, light, dark, all of the opposition or the things that we would tend to look at and go, oh, I don't want to be a part of that, or I don't want my consciousness to be part of that, I don't want my reality to be part of that. But as we involve ourselves in consciousness and become aware of it, we have to realize that we exist on all levels, and to accept consciousness or the divine into our being, we have to include everything. So in the theory of that, anything that would actually make us pick sides would limit our expansion, and we don't want to limit our expansion. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's my perspective on consciousness. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. It is a lot to unpack.
And what if you were to say unpack a little tiny bit of that for the group, like what are the main points of what you just shared? Like what is the most essential piece about what is consciousness?
Well, I think the most essential piece would be the unity. So really, we want to look at things in terms of connection with unity and who we are as a collective. So how do we become more connected or consciously creating a reality? So when we're looking at consciousness and creation, what are the things that will help us get to that conscious creation? And I guess the other important point is, even though we're looking at things in terms of duality and we want to connect all of those pieces of duality, we crave connection. We all crave this connection. We want the connection. We need the connection. And we feel it. We feel it with each other all the time. All of us feel some sense of connection with each other. So what is that source coming from? Where is that coming from? So that would probably be, for me, what weaves us, right? Yeah. So that would be the most important. Where does that come from? And then how do we consciously create a reality from that?
So this is Beth. She's going to do the rest of the talk. Obviously, no, that's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
And it's hilarious you picked the exact point.
So I said everything you wanted to say.
You stole all my talk anyway.
Okay, we're all done.
We're all done.
My work is done here.
No, but the connection piece, so important when it comes to consciousness. And we'll get to how to make that deeper connection, because I think that's so key But if we look out into the world, you know, it's easy to despair. It's easy to see that some things feel chaotic. So there's a certain amount of chaos among us. We've been through a whole bunch of chaos. So when we look out, it's easy to feel like, you know, how do I get to this place of consciousness? What is consciousness? How do I find more peace in life? And how do I become loving in a world that feels so chaotic? And what Beth was saying is so key, connection. So consciousness is about making connection, and it's making a connection to a place deeper than the mind. So, but why do we need consciousness? And maybe I'll flip that to you first. Why do you think the world needs consciousness?
I think the world needs consciousness. I don't know if I would use the word needs it. It just is. It's just present because love is present. Because love comes from us and we come from love. So I would start there in terms of why. It continues creation. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to continue creation. But consciousness just is. It's part of what has created the development of where we are and who we are.
Yeah.
As a collective.
Yeah, and I see a need for an expansion of consciousness. And again, if I revert to the very first thing I said, the type of connection that I think that the world needs to see right now is a deeper connection to the divinity within ourselves. And when I wasn't very conscious, when I wasn't very connected to that deeper space in me, life was more difficult. It was like a struggle. Every day felt like I was walking uphill. And I think that's why we need to bring more consciousness into our lives, so that we're not working against life, but rather we're flowing with life. Because you said in your opening, consciousness is everything. And when we realize that everything around us is part of the collective consciousness, it's not something we need to push against, but rather flow with. And that's what connecting to that inner consciousness has brought me, a sense of understanding the flow of everything and flowing with it, not fighting against it. Because the only consciousness that I was connected to before was this mental world going on in my mind.
So the temporal self,
the
rather
temporal
than
self.
The eternal self.
That's right. And then the emotional world.
Yeah.
Now, moving into consciousness, how do we bring more of that into our lives?
Well, I think if you were to sum it up, there's three different areas where I would look at in terms of developing. Do you want me to go into that?
Yeah,
I
sure.
would consider 3 areas. So I think when we start to initially become aware of our consciousness, in that awareness just in itself, we are in that awareness, we become embodied in the consciousness itself. So that's key. It's that awareness is that first step in development. So we learn things from that perspective about how powerful we are. And we aren't taught these things in school as we should be. We should be taught how powerful we are. But I think one of the first things that we learn is that our thoughts can create our reality. And so what happens though is in that first stage, we're still focused on the temporal self, and we tend to create from ego, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with creating from ego, because it's the first step in us learning about how do we become more? How do we become accepting of all that we have? And how do we become accepting of both oppositions? So the good and the bad, the dark and the light, the stillness and the motion. How do we become that? So then once we start to learn, okay, this is the ego, this is my awareness of the ego, we can start to move past that. And once you move past that, you're ultimately creating, literally, from this state of pure being. And so once you step into that third step, you're creating from a place of pureness and love and light, and then you are universal consciousness. And that's something that I believe that as a humanity that we are capable of doing, and I think that we will get there. I feel it in my body and in my being with that connection with humanity, that we are capable of doing that. So I would say those first 3 steps are completely necessary. What about you? What would you say are the steps necessary?
I'm gonna show you a demonstration first.
Okay.
If you hold that. So
Is
this
this glass?
it's crystal.
Okay. Don't drop it.
So just hold it down so you can see inside.
Oh yeah.
So this represents collective consciousness. Now, Beth started out, what we think about, we manifest in our lives. We become an attractor that pulls what we think about to our current reality. So the collective mind, and I learned this when I was with the Ashaya monks. Most of the thoughts, just random thoughts dropping into my mind, were negative. And my mind just constantly was on repeat, having the same old thoughts day in, day out. And if you approach somebody, quite often, there'll just be a little bit of a stream of complaints. So this is like a negative thought going into consciousness. 2 thoughts going into consciousness.
You want to give examples of negative thoughts?
So a negative thought, oh, this weather really sucks. God, everything's so expensive. My lawnmower broke. My wife.
It's okay, I can fix it.
Beth can fix it. Okay, so we just have this non-stop commentary and negative thoughts. So say this like 1,000 thoughts. We pour that in, and you see how it affects consciousness. Now these represent negative thinking, negative thoughts, just the daily grind of, but consciousness. When we have one conscious thought can change the whole thing. It's completely changed that. 2 conscious thoughts. Now it's completely purple.
So it only takes 2.
Takes
2 conscious thoughts.
Well, the whole shtick was it was supposed to do it in 1 drop. It's ruined. That's a negative thought. There you go. Okay, but you get the gist. 1 conscious thought, in this case, 2 conscious thoughts can negate so much. And so that's the importance. Thanks, Peggy. Little sugar, it's freshy. So that's the importance of raising, and what raising our consciousness does. How we get there is that we notice the mind, like you said. We notice what's going on in our thoughts, and we learn to set down those thoughts. We allow ourselves to be present with the moment. This isn't new information. Very, very simple, basic instructions. But for a good majority of my life, I was caught in my mind missing the moment, missing what was around me. And I was caught into a dialogue. A conscious thought arises out of the deeper place within us. So that's where the divine comes into play. When consciousness starts rising up, when I'm quiet enough, when I stop talking to this thing between my ears, and I get quiet enough to hear the divinity that's in my soul. That's okay. Nobody was harmed. When I get quiet enough to listen to that consciousness that's in me, that's the effect. Just one of those little thoughts. Now I can outwardly apply that. So, Beth, I love your top.
Thank you.
Thank you. Praise, gratitude, mutual love. Did you want a hug?
Sure. You want a hug too? He wants a hug.
Everybody wants hugs. Okay, so that's a doorway into raising consciousness. Praise people. Look for the goodness that you see around you. Just doing that raises consciousness. It's a doorway into bringing connection, communication. And then when there's a love that happens, we find the divine. For the essence of the divine, it is love itself. Other ways to bring consciousness into our lives.
Oh, there's so many. Meditation, prayer, trying to think of other things.
Yeah, like
doing things that make you happy, resonant things, being around people that you love, creating love, thinking about things that make you feel good, participating in things that make you feel good, even just thinking about, that's another interesting thing, thinking about things that make you feel good. There's no separation in the body. The body physiologically doesn't separate itself from thinking about things that feel good and awareness of actually not being in that state. So it brings us into those states of awareness. That right. Feels good. When you feel good, you're in consciousness.
And I think when we start to listen a little deeper to what's within, we start to build this connection with the soul inside of ourselves. And when we start to move from that space, we make a connection to this space, and we start to move outwardly from this space. What that creates is a connection and a movement toward our purpose. And I've said this in so many talks, where our purpose is not 100 miles ahead of us. It's not 100 miles behind us if we've suddenly had a setback in life. We don't get behind in purpose. So by making that conscious connection to the silence, the soul, the divine, whatever you want to call it, that space in you that's alive, we start to move our purpose. And I think the last point that I want to say, that how we connect to expanding consciousness is to be you. There's nobody out there that can be you other than you. Your life is a unique expression from the divine. It was given to you as a gift for you to move forward in. So the thing that has made me most connected was just being me. So I stopped wearing shoes that didn't fit. I didn't try to be somebody else. Like, Beth's great, but I don't want to be her. Maybe for a day.
You're good as you.
I'm good. Okay, see? I'm good. We're all good. So to make a massive leap in consciousness, if everybody just started to be them, be you, accept that. Don't try to be anything more or anything less. And I think in my discovery of self, of who am I, what am I, my life has expanded in so many ways that my mind could never put together. So, any final thoughts, Beth?
Just a gratitude and appreciation to everyone for being here and listening and loving us through this, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody.